Well, good morning, everybody. First, I want to thank you for having the cemetery board here and allowing us to conduct our meeting. It's my favorite meeting of the year, and I do not lie when I say that. I always enjoy the interchange and hearing your questions and hopefully being able to answer them, sometimes not. But it's a great opportunity for us, so thank you. I'm Dan Shapiro. I'm Secretary of State Cesar Paralysis Designee as Chair.
Bob Welch, representing Commissioner Naraf Shah.
I'm Christopher Wiles, representing the Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman.
Louis Polishuk, Director of the Division of Cemeteries.
Tony Melillo, Counsel to the Cemetery Board.
Cemetery Division.
Chet Buckwitz, Division of Cemeteries.
There we go. So, that being said, why don't we just get business? And minutes of our last meeting, has everybody had an opportunity to review them?
Yes.
Any changes, corrections, amendments?
None.
Wow, neither do I. Once again.
Oh.
Hey, thanks, Sue. That's a great job. Okay. Motion to approve?
So, second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I got to find a way to lengthen this out. Unfortunately, we have a real short agenda, so we'll just talk. Yeah. All right. Legislation and regulation. Tony.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a report. Copies are available outside if anyone in the audience would like to see the legislative report. A couple of bills have moved since our last meeting. On third page, number 8, a bill dealing with the crime of cemetery desecration was defeated in codes, but then number 9, a similar bill that was in the Senate, a similar bill passed the Senate and was delivered to the Assembly. No action in the Assembly.
What happened? Why did they defeat it? Yeah.
And then
Something obvious.
next to last page, the first item under items of interest, an amendment to a consumer protection bill dealing with pet cemeteries, but no other movement on that bill. And the last item, number 5, under items of interest, in the Senate, that bill has been reported to a committee to finance. It was in Mental Health and Development Disabilities Committee. So the big action was a month ago. Not much going on.
Okay. Thanks, Tony. What's happening with the pending rules that we're working on?
We need to sit down and revise our draft based on the information we've gotten from NISAC dealing with installment sales. That's the issue that we're grappling with, that how best to address that to meet the needs of our accountants and the
Yeah, that might be a good thing to do a little précis on the bill, since not everybody here knows what we've been working on. Why don't you let folks know what this is all about?
One of the big impetuses in revising the financial reporting regs was the categories of small, medium, and large cemeteries hadn't been changed in a long time, and cemeteries that didn't really belong in the category of large cemeteries found themselves there because it's based on total assets, and their assets had grown even though they were not doing significant activity. So we're amending the categories so that, you know, cemeteries that actually are large are in the large category, and et cetera, to reduce the burden on some cemeteries that were in the wrong category.
Right, because the requirements for disclosure, if you will, vary significantly among the categories,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So what does a large cemetery have to do?
They have to submit audited financial statements.
And a medium?
The
Okay, is that me you can't hear? Or Tony?
Okay.
Usually
How about
I'm the
now?
one. All right.
Is that better? Okay. So, yeah, the large cemeteries have to file audited financial statements. Chet, what do the medium file? Reviews. And the smaller ones can file our forms.
Right.
So those reporting requirements are being tweaked a little, but, you know, the major change, one of the major changes is the change in what cemeteries belong in which category. So one of the issues we have to deal with is installment sales and how that's reported, especially with regard to deposits into the PM fund. making sure that they're timely and accurately filed, and making sure that our staff can look at the books and know right away whether there's compliance or not. And it's tricky because cemeteries that do installment sales, they have a variety of ways of doing it. There's no consistency. And so coming up with a consistent rule when there's that much inconsistency in practice has been a little tricky.
But we'll get there. This is going to be a consensus rulemaking. We're going to try real hard.
Yep.
And we all agree that the changes that we're proposing to make, at least the purpose of the changes, is beneficial, and we'll figure out a way to make it work for everybody. But it takes work, as
Yes.
most things do. Okay. Anything else pending, Tony?
Nope.
Okay. Very good.
Do you have any estimation of what the parameters and dollar amounts are going to be for those categories?
Boy, I don't have it with me. Do you remember, Chet, what the new...
Well, historically, a cemetery that had over $1 million in combined assets was considered a large cemetery, which forced them to have more financial statements. I think that it now has to be $10 million or greater in combined assets.
Were you able to hear that?
Okay, so 10 million is large?
Right.
That's what's under consideration right now.
Yeah, for the record, so it's on the video, we're going from, the current is, you become a large once you cross the $1 million threshold. The proposal that is being discussed, it hasn't actually been proposed yet, would have a threshold for a large of $10 million. I don't remember the threshold for medium.
I think medium would be the $1 million.
Million, right, I think that's right. Don't, since it's not been proposed yet, I suppose it doesn't matter if it's wrong. But I think that's right, that you're small if you're under $1 million, under the to-be proposed discussion.
So every meeting, we'll keep you informed as to where we are on that, and hopefully we'll have a draft that we can circulate soon.
Yep.
All right. Mr. Polishuk, this is your time to shine.
Okay, a couple of things to report on the division level. Last month, I had hoped to, we discussed briefly a division initiative that we were about to discuss, which we hadn't discussed yet, because my division meeting ended up being after the board meeting, about trying to do more outreach in more areas of the state, with a particular focus on reaching cemeterians who we aren't reaching, and reaching local government officials as to what we can do to be a resource. We've had some initial discussions of that. I think what we're going to try to do, we have a number of these forums that we're already doing in the state. We're going to try to work with other organizations, including hopefully this one, in partnering and getting the word out better on those. We're also going to try to identify a couple of, I guess you'd call them, smaller markets. We have a thing in Syracuse, we have a thing in Buffalo, we have a thing here in Albany, maybe smaller areas that would still be large enough to catch a bunch of people, and have a couple more of these presentations, just basics on cemetery law, cemetery management, and what the division can do, and I think importantly what the towns can do. I think that there are, one thing we have found is when we're having trouble with the cemetery, where it's having trouble reaching people, having trouble finding people to serve on the board, reaching out to the town, local officials sooner rather than later seems to be resulting in restoring the cemeteries to a more functional state, or in at least one case, the cemetery agreeing that it simply can't continue and being abandoned to the town, as opposed to remaining in limbo. We think that getting the towns involved at an earlier stage is going to be helpful. Changing gears, but staying on the subject of local governments, we had a recent inquiry, and I am drawing a blank as to the identity of the inquiry, but from a cemetery in Niagara County. Apparently, the Niagara Department of Social Services has changed its reimbursement methodology for indigent burials. I'm bringing this up just in case there's anyone from Niagara County in the room, but also because this does, the answer that we provided to the question plays out statewide. What Niagara County did is it went from paying the cemetery separately at the time of interment to paying a lump sum to the funeral director to be shared, a portion of which to be shared with the cemetery, payment to be made within 8 weeks of the interment. So we had a question is, what are we supposed to do about this? Number one thing you're supposed to do about this is you must file rates with us, and if you're going to be charging a rate for a social service or indigent burial, you've got to file that with us. And we will look at that to make sure that the requested rate actually makes sense in terms of the financial viability of the cemetery. Second point to be made is cemeteries have an absolute right to demand payment at the time of burial. It's in the not-for-profit corporation law itself. So they're under no obligation to accept a burial from social services, or anyone else for that matter. I don't want to only single out governmental entities. They're under no obligation to accept a burial without being paid. Number three, and maybe mitigating all of this, is that this policy, like many other county policies, do allow relatives of the indigent, not the indigent themselves, obviously, to contribute to the costs of the funeral and burial on top of the payment from social services. In other words, if you have a cousin who's going to come up with some money, you don't have to, that doesn't disqualify you from social service payments. At least that's how I understand it. And that does sort of provide some ability to be able to do this for the cemeteries. Again, every county does it differently. Every county's rate structures do it differently. But if you are going to be charging an indigent burial rate, you've got to come to us first. I don't think I had anything else. I was trying to stretch this out.
That's all right. We're going to open it up after we get through our agenda.
I probably do have something else that I will remember the second we go into executive session.
Then we have to come out of executive session, right?
Well, we have to come out of executive session to set the next meeting date and close.
There you go. Okay.
That's always the most exciting part of the meeting.
Yes. Chet, thank you. by
Here,
the way.
you check, just so it's on the video, you should do it from up here.
Yeah.
Is this on? Hello? Yep.
I don't know if you're being caught by the camera there. Yeah. You are? Okay, good.
The vandalism fee report for the period fiscal year ending March 31st, 2014. Vandalism fees collected were $461,955. Applications granted totaled $741,740. Applications pending are $662,985. Of the applications granted, 8 were for vandalism, totaling $70,818. 24 applications were for restoration, totaling $529,115. And 3 applications for abandonment totaled $141,807.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Hi, Chet.
Does that mean the New York State for year 2013 regulated territories were like $92,000?
I didn't hear the whole question.
Does that mean in the year 2013 the New York State regulated cemeteries and cremations, we only had 92,000 burials or cremations or terminated?
Oh, you mean with respect to the fees collected for, right,
It's $5 per every interment.
right. So what's the math, Chet?
That's an excellent question.
See,
It's
Chet's the math guy. I can't do that.
Yeah, it's just under 100,000. So yeah, I think you said what, 90,000 or so. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Sorry.
But that would be burials and cremations.
What's the death rate in New York State? Does anyone know?
I do not. Consider, too, that these are burials and cremations that are under our jurisdiction. that would not include burials for religious, private, or municipal cemeteries. So that statistic, I gather, would be with Department of Health.
Are any still coming in?
But, that's a really interesting line of inquiry.
This is true, too.
I think for our own knowledge, I'd like to follow up on that and just sort of try and figure out what the death rate is and what portion of that goes to public cemeteries and if these mesh up.
That's an excellent
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Agreed.
Interesting.
Although one additional wrinkle is it is possible that some of the cemeteries are a little bit late in submitting these.
Agreed. There
Yeah.
are some stragglers. This is true.
But the stragglers are not going to represent more than, a few percent.
Hopefully not.
That's true.
That would be bad.
I believe it's less than 1%.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
For those that are under our jurisdiction. Yes?
Anybody else on vandalism? I love you, Dick. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, Cemetery of Highlands again. That's like 3 weeks in a row.
Welcome back.
Good morning, Joanne. So you're before us with a major renovation for the acceptance of fill. Could you tell us something about it and the nature of the fill first, what
Actually,
it is?
can you do it from up here so it's on the video, please? I think we want to try to increase our number of hits on YouTube so we can overtake, I don't know, Justin Bieber.
Yeah, there you go.
So we want to make sure, but seriously, if we're going to be recording these things, we really ought to try to record everything.
Good morning. Cemetery of the Highlands was approached by contractors from the Woodbury Commons Premium Outlets, the world premier outlet center on the East Coast. They're doing a major expansion. They have 30,000 cubic yards of clean fill. Years and years ago, before my time, Cemetery of the Highlands allowed contractors to come in and take out fill over the years, which left us with a big pit. We're trying to fill it. It's not an area that we're going to be using probably for 40 or 50 years.
So you have an immediate, it's
There's
going
not
to
an
take you a lot of time, but you have an immediate use for the fill.
Correct.
You're not just banking it. That was
No,
my
no,
question.
and they're actually coming in and grading it to our specifications. We
That's
had a
great.
master plan done many, many years ago, and that's what they're working off of, or that's what they will be working off of.
So the only question that I had about it was the nature of the fill. You know the statutory, no construction and demolition debris in
Correct.
fill, and the history of that. I think you do know the history. I think you
Yes.
remember. So can you what
It's,
assurances
part of
do you have?
Part of the application process for the Village of Woodbury to get the building permit, that's part of their stipulations. I turned that in this morning.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be clean fill, no tree roots. There's a $10,000 fine for any time they come up and find that. In the expansion project that was approved about 10 years ago, we started to take some of this fill about 2 months ago, and the building inspector is up there every day.
That's great.
Trust me. So is my board.
Conditions of fill permit.
There
I
you
see
go.
that. Very nice. Okay.
Are they paying the cemetery anything to put it?
No. What we're hoping, it's not costing us anything. When we complete our expansion, we're hoping that they're going to kind of help us out and possibly do all of it for
Do
free.
what?
We have an expansion project that we started 10 years ago, and when we complete it, we're hoping they're going to do it for us. We haven't gotten that far.
Very good. All right. Well, any questions? Any more discussion on this?
Do people purchasing graves at your cemetery get discount cards for Woodbury Commons if this goes through?
Good question.
Nothing else? If there's nothing, Tony, you good?
We'd have to approve that, of course.
All right, well, having no discussion on this, anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Chris, second.
No second?
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you
You're
very
good?
much.
Okay. All right, we have a columbarium application from Fishkill Rural Cemetery. Is that cemetery here? Okay, then we'll just handle it. So it looks like a nice project. Chet, maybe you want to give us a little summary?
Yes, Fishkill Rural Cemetery applied to construct a columbarium, the cost of which would be $28,657. It'll include some 72 niches, foundation, sidewalk, and some other structural requirements, including the equipment to construct it. Overall, the estimated revenues from sales of the niches is approximately $123,600. 10% of which would go into the permanent maintenance. Just under 10%, about 8% would be for marketing or selling. The niches estimated to be about $9,800. The recovery of construction, the $28,657, would leave a net gain to the cemetery of some $72,700.
From Joe.
The division reviewed the fiscal condition of the cemetery. It has combined funds in excess of $2 million, of which the general fund is in excess of $600,000. The last annual report submitted indicated they had a net surplus in operations of $32,740. So the cemetery appears to be fiscally sound and well-managed in terms of its finances. And the division feels that this is an appropriate project for the cemetery with sufficient financing and generating a sound return on investment.
That's great. Hey, although I see they have sufficient monies in the general fund, but how are they proposing to finance it or pay for it?
It's from the general
Just
fund.
take it right out?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And
Well, what is this Mausoleum Expansion Bank Fund? Is that the general fund?
1 minute.
It's on page 2, number 3. The project will be
Yes, I know.
funded by a Mausoleum Expansion Bank Fund.
I probably lump that in with the general fund. It's separated money that's available to the cemetery. It's really not restricted by us, other than the cemetery, so.
bookkeeping entry?
Correct.
And is this like one of several, or is this one in the series, or?
That I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'd have to look at that.
How long for the payback? How long to sell out, do you know?
That I did not look at, but on average, the payback is, well, the sellout is about 8 years,
Okay.
8 to 10 years.
All right.
Again, the cemetery appears to be sufficiently sound in its finances, and this looks like a good project in
Yeah,
terms of return, overall return.
This is one of those, too, where I appreciate having the pictures in the package, because it's a very nice-looking project.
Agreed,
It looked good.
right.
Any other comments, questions? All right. Want a motion this time? Got to give some fun for you.
I'll move to accept the plan.
Okay? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. So you don't have to be here to get things approved. It does happen sometimes. Thanks,
Thank
Chad.
you. Yep.
Thank you very much. Well, surprisingly, and purely by coincidence, we've actually gone through our public agenda. So I don't want to leave you guys yet. I'd love to entertain questions, comments from folks. Fire away. Mr. Bruns.
I'm not too sure you should have two fees for the same thing, such as indigent burial fees. It's always been my understanding that you have one fee for the same job, which is a grave or a burial. Indigent burial, if they have a grave, usually the social services will take care of the opening or something like that. But when it's indigent, we can't pay the full price, that's why we have other indigent cemeteries. I would say a lot of owners will certainly complain that they didn't have any money, but they came up with it. question these separate fees?
Yeah, it's funny because you echo some of the discussions I've had with Tony and with Louis. I think there are some cemeteries historically that do have indigent fees.
There are certainly, I looked into this recently with respect to crematories, and there are certainly crematories that have indigent fees.
Right.
On a
And that
separate
doesn't mean
scale.
that it's right or wrong, because your point's very well taken. The statutory framework, of course, is the reasonable cost of providing the services. So the question is, well, how is the cost of providing the services any less or different for an indigent burial as opposed to a regular burial? That's a heck of a good question. And you really have to start to focus on what does reasonable mean, all right? How much latitude does the cemetery have to accommodate some social purposes as long as within its financial capacity to do so? And that's something we're going to wrestle with when we get one of these. But, yeah, that's a good point, and we'll be debating it in open session when the time comes.
Could the grave be discounted too?
What's that?
You have to wrestle also with the grave price be discounted too.
Right, of course, grave prices don't get the approval of the board, right? That's a filing with us, so the strictures are a little different. But yes. Anybody else? Yes.
I have a question. Louis mentioned earlier about reaching out to municipalities, and obviously a cemetery that runs out of money or doesn't have a board or is run poorly gets dumped on the municipality. But in the interim, we learned after Hurricane Irene and Hurricane Sandy that some of the smaller cemeteries that had tremendous damage were, by law, precluded from the municipalities helping them out, even though they were going to get reimbursed from FEMA and probably wouldn't cost them anything. So is there any way in the future, and I don't know if it's a legislative change, which maybe makes it too complicated, that municipalities try to actually get a cemetery dumped on them, or having cemeteries under their geographic area could possibly provide aid in an emergency or in extenuating circumstances?
Well, actually, there was a recent statutory change, in large part pushed by this organization, your organization, that provides for municipal assistance. Tony, you?
Yeah, it's Section 1506-C. Wait, is that the right one? No.
It's General Municipal 165A, right?
I'm sorry, which one is it?
Isn't it in General
They'll figure it out in a minute.
165A, I think?
Yes, that's it. It allows a cemetery to provide either financial assistance or assistance in kind.
Municipality.
I'm sorry, the town, the
Right.
municipality
Right.
to provide.
And that was 2 years ago, was it?
Does it apply to cities?
General Municipal Law 165-A.
Yeah. Now, with respect to FEMA, I have to tell you that we did pursue FEMA for direct reimbursement to classify cemeteries as being among those not-for-profits which are entitled to largesse, and we didn't succeed, all right?
You said they turned you down.
Yeah, well, you know what? It was one of those kinds of things where we never got to the point where we got a firm answer. We just didn't get any action. We'll continue to push on that, and in fact, I guess we really ought to be pushing before the next disaster, because there will be another. So that's something we should keep on the radar. We made some progress, but we didn't get to where we needed to be. Yes, hi.
Is there any way for our own organization, I mean, we're talking about municipalities, my cemeteries in New York City, no way in how are we getting any assistance, any manner, shape, or form? The way we collect $5 from every burial, possible for these states to collect $5 as an emergency fund for cemeteries in snowstorms. We have major tree damage, that's the big thing, sending monuments back up. That we could collect our own and make it a fund that cannot be cleaned by this governor
Yeah, like
for the assistance of cemeteries. I remember when Buffalo was hit a number of years ago, one cemetery had millions of dollars worth of damage. He had it in his endowment fund, but others do not, and are still cleaning up. Is there some way that we can fund emergency money?
Well, if you're talking about a statewide fund, all right, obviously that will require legislative change. Nothing is beyond the power of the legislature and the governor to do. However, your comment with respect to sweeping, that's going to, that is what it is. All right. I don't know how that gets handled. Although I'm sure that if the fund is created with an express purpose, it is honored as we have honored other responsibilities.
We had to, we would even take a fund that might sweep part of it, but at least there would be some money there.
This won't help all cemeteries, but it seems to me that on an individualized basis, if a cemetery is facing extraordinary expenses in order to recover from a storm, that could provide the basis for fee increases. And that would be something that the board would be very partial to, obviously, because the cemetery needs to recover.
I had that because I lost 50 trees.
Mm-hmm.
And Richard gave us 2.5 years of an extra fee.
Right, exactly.
But that doesn't help you at the time that you have to do the cleanup and pay for it.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if we can't consider allowing for fees to cover what I'll call, and pun I guess is intended, a rainy day fund, all right, for the cemetery to have in the event of an emergency situation. It's not beyond the pale at all. That's part of operations, and I would imagine many cemeteries within their general fund do just that now. But the fact is that other cemeteries are operating hand to mouth and don't have the ability under their current fee structure to create such a fund and make it robust. And that's something that we certainly could consider on a rate application.
So we could put that in for January?
It's something that, that would be something that would be good to talk to the division about.
I don't see why not. The only problem is, if you can, your suggestion, I think, the reason you're talking about a state fund that's self-funded, you're really looking at pooling risk as opposed to bearing, if you're charging this fee in your cemetery, yes, you can raise your fee and you can dedicate that to certain things as long as it's going into general revenue, that's fine. But if your goal is to pool risk, then you need your neighbors to do that as well, and you need other cemeteries, presumably from other areas, because a disaster that hits Staten Island is not going to affect Syracuse, probably, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So could these cemeteries voluntarily get together and pool risk and apply to us? Analytically, I don't see why not. You'd have a massive, what the economists call collective action problem there, but you wouldn't need legislation for a group of cemeteries to get together and say, hey, we're all going to effectively self-insure against this particular type of disaster by putting aside funds, sharing them, and agreeing how that revenue would be shared. I have no idea if that's realistic.
Would we be better off asking for a rate increase, be it $5 or $10 a burial, to put into a rainy day?
Of course, that also depends on whether there's also that also you have to look at whether your competitors are doing the same thing. Because if you're raising too much money to cover that and they aren't, then it may be self-defeating.
But that's within obviously, every cemetery has to
Right.
consider that. The better or worse, I can't say. These are sort of creative solutions that we're batting around. Clearly, for an individual cemetery, all right, if you have the capacity to do that, I think it's a great idea. On a broader level, when we're talking about self-insurance pool over a number of cemeteries, that is a broad solution, but it's going to be probably a lot of work to get there. Not that we aren't willing to work with you to do it, but that's something for you to consider and discuss among yourselves and come to us with.
The legal side, short of having anything that requires legislation, we're amenable to considering it. On the business side, we're not really in the business. So while we evaluate rates to see whether they ensure the soundness, try to see whether they ensure the soundness of the cemetery, there's only so much into the details of how you do business that we can do, just because we're kind of out of our depth.
Well, I hope we didn't really answer your question well. Yes.
And in response to that question, wouldn't it be advantageous to look at catastrophic insurance policy through an insurance company?
Assuming that's available and that it would actually cover this type of loss, yes, of course.
We've asked.
Yeah.
Nobody covers tree damage. It has to be to a building.
Okay. Anybody else? Hi.
George asked me to find out.
Uh-oh.
Would there be an opportunity to maybe do a request for a loan on your permanent maintenance trust fund that then would get paid back with that rate increase in that type of a situation?
Yeah, there's an opportunity, but the board, as I think you probably know, is very, very skittish around taking monies out of the permanent maintenance fund. But in emergency situations, if there is a realistic ability to repay and the permanent maintenance fund is not diminished in any way, certainly that's something that the board would consider.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Anybody want to say anything before we take a few minutes and then go into executive session?
Is next month's meeting, is the date other than, it's not the third Thursday?
The date for next month's meeting, this is very important.
We agreed the fourth Thursday of May as opposed to the third. To kind of provide a little more space between the late meeting and the next.
Fourth Thursday of May for the next board meeting.
So that's the day before Thanksgiving?
The day before the day before?
Not Thanksgiving, Memorial Day.
And I accepted that. You see,
You knew what I
all I
meant.
know is I like to eat on Thanksgiving. That's it. You made me happy.
You like to eat on Memorial Day, too?
That's true.
It's May 22nd.
Very good. All right, folks. Well, I want to thank you for having us.
May 22nd is the third Thursday, May 29th.
Fourth.
Whoa.
Start with that one.
You know,
This is on the
I
first.
could never get
Ooh, this is
Richard to
cool.
stop, and now I've got Lewis. Thank you all for having us. We'll take a few minutes break. I'd love to chat with you individually if you have anything to chat with us about. We'll be going to executive session
As soon as we can find where that
as
is.
soon as we can find where that is, and
We'll actually be holding executive session while hiding under this table.
and we'll come out, and if there's anything to announce, we will, but I doubt that there will be. So thanks again, everybody, and look forward to seeing you next year.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Stephen Sloan, chair of the next event that's going on. We're not starting until 1 o'clock. These guys, as always, are entertaining and helpful. There is a ticketed lunch for those who have participated. It's going to be starting at 11:30 right next door to us here. So until then, you're free to do what you want to do. I'm sure they'll be back after executive session to chit-chat with you if you like. And welcome again.